My name is Mackenzie Green. I am currently the VP of Social for Who What Wear, Click Brands. Thanks to a wonderful acquisition by Future Media, I also have the pleasure of not only overseeing the social strategy for Who What Wear, but for Marie Claire US and Marie Claire UK as well.
David Schweidel. I'm a professor of marketing at Emory University's Goizueta Business School. And for the last decade or so, I've been conducting research on social media, primarily through the lens of how can organizations use social media not only to get their message out, but also to learn about their audience.
What are your thoughts for what should marketers or just your average, right, everybody has to have a brand. So everybody's trying to build their own personal brand, whether they're an entrepreneur, whether they're a startup, whatever they're doing. What should people be tuned into? Is there anything that excites you or that you think is going to really start exploding on the scene in the next few years?
I'm definitely really excited by YouTube Shorts. I feel like we're not talking about it enough. Like, I feel like we've definitely got to have more conversations about what that's doing and the fact that that is even limited to a minute. And it's not that it's a trailer for your YouTube channel. I think we're going to find like a new kind of genre of YouTube creator coming strictly from shorts and having no long form video. I am really loving this. I have this huge prediction that everybody now is going to be in the creator economy. Like I love that TikTok where it's like, we don't need any more influencers. Like, dear God, we need carpenters. And then the person's like, hey guys, a lot of you have been asking about what kind of wood I'm using. But I do think we're all in the creator economy in the sense of creator work proves that you understand sales, you understand marketing. So I think we're going to see everybody from finance people in the creator economy to trade workers to everyone. And then another one I'm really into, it's not even that it's a prediction, but I think LinkedIn is starting to emerge more and more as a social platform that people are like realizing the value in that as well as a way of converting to site or converting to your business. And then I'm also just really big on what Ty Haney and that whole team at Try Your Best are doing with, NFTs and blockchain technology and connecting CPG products in this more exclusive way. I think we've seen it, this kind of decentralized way of bringing an audience together outside of your Facebook groups. I think we're going to start to see a lot more of that for brands as well. And I'm excited to see what happens. And I weirdly think that Snapchat is going to be how a lot of people get accustomed to these digital spaces, these, kind of creating digital third spaces for their brands and stuff. And, and I'm excited to see what we do with AI. I could go on also all day about Chat GPT and what that's going to mean for social, especially social marketing. But, I'm sure my team would hear this and like roll their eyes. Or like, yes, we know we can use all this AI capability to make our jobs easier. But yeah, I think I'm excited to see for my nieces and nephews. I think prompting science is going to become a major part of the marketing mix.
And one of the things that we're hearing discussed a little bit more is some brands are starting to experiment with NFTs, so non-fungible tokens that live on a blockchain. And we're doing some work thinking around, well, is there the potential for consumers to have perhaps more control over not only the content that they're exposed to, but also how much they choose to share with marketers? We're starting to see early indicators of that coming out of Europe with GDPR. We've seen some legislation passed in the United States around consumer privacy, but there's a lot of conversation around what's being referred to as surveillance capitalism, kind of this idea of hyper-targeting users based on their data with advertising. And depending on how that regulatory discussion ultimately plays out, marketers may have to think a little bit about, how do I form these deeper relationships with consumers? It's not as easy as just saying, okay, let's have some videos on TikTok. Let's make some reels for Instagram. Let's be sure that we're kind of carpet bombing social media content. They may have to think about, okay, maybe I don't have as many people that are willing to sit through my marketing messages. How does that change the messages that I should be putting out? Because now I'm engaging with an audience that has already bought in, rather than one that I'm also trying to convince.
Do you have your eye on any augmented reality or AI, AR trends?
Yeah,
that experience?
I was a nut about AR in business school. Like, I remember the VR revolution was happening and people were like, movie theaters are going to be, people are in headsets. And I remember doing my internship at Paramount between first year and second year. And I was watching the Pokemon Go craze. And I was like, oh, AR is the future. Like, people are out here and people are still playing Pokemon Go. Listen, I'm a nerd and I see the TikToks, but like, it's so funny to me that I just feel like that's the future of things. You know, I love that I saw at Art Basel that a lot of people were creating AR experiences. You know, there's a video going around where it was kind of like, if you couldn't physically attend the exhibit, you know, this guy showed that you could walk into the exhibit on the beach, that he had his phone out, physically walked in on the beach, then walked out of the room. And I think, to me, I think that's going to be, when people talk about the metaverse, I'm like, I think that's what's going to happen. Like, it's going to become this thing of, hey, could you not attend the Christopher John Rogers show in person? Well, here is a, you know, proof of attendance NFT that then takes you to an AR, you know, runway show where now you're watching it in real time with everybody who's in New York, and it's just as exclusive and just as fancy, but we have a better way of getting your data after the show so that we can stay in touch with you. But I love AR, and I really feel like games are a conduit to how we adopt new technologies. So I love when I see like new, you know, AR filters, new AR games. I mean, every time I talk to a peer and they're like, I will never get into AR. And I'm like, aren't you using the Marianne Hewitt filter on Instagram? Like, didn't you use the dog filter on Snapchat? Like, you've engaged with AR technology before. Don't freak out.
What I find interesting is kind of the adoption that we've seen of these virtual influencers, because influencers have become a really big market, a great opportunity for marketers to connect through them with consumers. But like other people, influencers have, you know, their own lives, and so there is some risk that comes into the process when you're counting on a specific person to deliver that message for you. And so we're seeing some virtual influencers gain traction with brands. The technology is there already, right? That we're not just talking about static images. We can be talking about, you know, full-length video content featuring a virtual influencer with AI created audio content. And so I think that has the potential to really give brands something to work with, because they are then in full control of that, you know, of that digitally human asset. So it's really the integration of multiple AI components, the, you know, the image generation, the video generation, perhaps we're even talking about scripts and ultimately audio content all being put together. I don't think there's any form of marketing today that AI doesn't have the potential to touch.
Other social commerce trends do you see in 2023 and beyond?
Yeah, I think I kind of touched on it with the Ty Haney piece, right? It's like what they've done with Try Your Best and Joggy and Get Joggy is really fascinating in the sense that you buy the products through this kind of separate, decentralized space. You're doing real-time kind of product recommendations. They're allowing the audience to focus group without that formality of having, you know, a research team that's there. Then it's like launching new products through that, creating these kind of digital collectibles that also connect to the physical item you've bought. And they're doing the same thing with June Shine as well. I think like that is what I see happening in kind of this e-commerce social world, is connecting the digital and the physical in a way that puts you in charge of the product. Yeah, their whole portfolio are just brands that really excite me. And I feel like we're not paying enough attention to what that team is doing.
In Asian markets, we see a lot of live streaming. Yeah, you have influencers who are essentially hosts of these live streaming shows, and people buying content during those shows. Hasn't taken off so much in the United States. We'll see smaller companies do that. So it might be, for example, independent retail stores that might run a Facebook Live and be doing sales during that programming. That's something that I think we may start to see emerge. Again, as we look at these social platforms, what are they going to enable that's going to allow them to generate more revenue? And so we may see them start to facilitate that live streaming, facilitate transactions being conducted during the live streams, and providing kind of that back end support for businesses to be able to do that in exchange for a cut of the proceeds. So that's something that I think we might see in the not too distant future.
Obviously, we know boosting sales, advertising products, always top of mind for marketers since the dawn of time. But what else should marketers in 2023 and beyond be prioritizing? What else is important to stand out in different social feeds to make sure that they're unique?
I thought a young woman on my team, one of my teams, said the most brilliant thing that I think a lot of us forget, especially as social marketers, is social is not literal. You know, I think that is like one of the biggest things that people have to keep in mind. Is I think we have the tendency to overanalyze, take it too seriously. We're A/B testing everything and not just saying to ourselves, what is a story that I as a consumer would want to hear, right? You know, I joke right now we're preparing for the Met Gala, and I was talking with one of the brands and I said, just the sheer fact of explaining what it is, you know, is kind of, maybe it feels like dumbing down in relationship to the brand, but we have to remember our content can be found by anyone, anywhere, and not everybody who's coming across it is, you know, a devotee of the Devil Wears Prada like the rest of us, you know, or just, and I think that's the big one. Like if I were to tell one of my peers anything, I'd be like, social is not literal. I think the other part is studying and understanding what's working in other industries. I think that's why I'm just so obsessed with what Ty Haney is doing, because I think we oftentimes as social marketers go, oh, well, that's something that is happening with a Web3 company that does CPG, but there's so much to learn from what they're doing to translate it to, you know, what you're doing on social, what you're doing in brick and mortar, all of this kind of stuff. And then the other part is storytelling. I think we undervalue as social marketers the beauty and value in telling a engaging story. And
how do we boost those sales? How do we drive traffic? These are all short-term oriented. So absolutely, we have to do it. Brand and product managers, they're going to be evaluated based on it. But what we've got to be thinking about is what's the longer-term value that these consumers are providing, because there's a set of tactics that we can use. If our goal is only to drive short-term sales and traffic, we can do that. We can pour money into it. We'll generate a bump in sales. But if all we're really doing is kind of borrowing those sales from the future, we really haven't moved the needle at all. So what we have to be thinking about is, how do I grow long-term profitability of consumers? And that's going to start with, which customers do I go after? Who are the ones that aren't just going to transact with me once, but what's the profile of the person that's going to have 5 or 6 transactions with me? And a lot of this comes down to kind of the simple economics. If I spend money to acquire a customer and all I get out of them is 1 transaction, I've got to keep on putting money into customer acquisition. Whereas if I get them, I make that initial investment and they tend to stick around for a while, I'm going to, not only do I recoup my initial investment, I continue to profit after that. And so, yeah, I would emphasize kind of that long-term mindset is something that marketers really should be adopting.